Hi, my name is Marilyn Jackal, and today I'll be discussing augmentative and alternative communication devices for students with autism spectrum disorder. Before I get started, just a little bit about myself. I am an alumni of SUNY Oneonta, where I received my bachelor's of elementary education 1 through 6 and a concentration in math. After that, I started my master's program as an educational technology specialist. I am anticipated to graduate in December 2021. This is currently my third year as a teacher. This year, I am currently teaching ELA and science for fourth grade in a school in Brooklyn, New York. My in school and the DOE is starting an initiative for computer science for all. I've been on the initiative for the past 3 years. It's really interesting to learn about coding and computer science and learn ways to implement it into the classroom and ensure that students are getting that exposure that most of these students in the inner cities are not experiencing. And just a little bit about myself, I really love exploring and hiking, being in the outdoors. So today we are going to discuss what an assistive technology is. We will also then go into discussing what exactly autism spectrum disorder is. After that, I will explain what an augmentative alternative communication device and some methods are. And then I will go into effective ways to use them in your classroom, how to benefit these methods within your classroom, and how to overcome some barriers that you might experience. Assistive technology refers to a tool that's used to further enhance an individual's learning, their work, or their daily life. Technology is all around us in the world that we're living in today. It's at the edge of our fingertips, and for some of us, it's as simple as picking up a device and starting a text messages, whereas some individuals need devices in order to help and support them. So as educators, we are looking for ways to implement these technologies into our instruction to further engage the students and support the students and to ensure that the students has the best experience that they can be living in their most able world and that they're in their least restrictive environment. Assistive technologies are devices to support and create independence for students with disabilities. Additionally, it refers to any service that is directly assistive to an individual. So as I said originally, as educators, we're looking for ways to improve our instruction. With the integration of technology, it helps to engage the student, as well as to help the student be a part of the classroom in their least restrictive environment. Some examples of assistive technology refer to no tech, low tech, mid tech, and high tech. Starting with no tech, that refers to assistive technology tools that are implemented but don't actually require a device. So for instance, a mnemonic device such as PEMDAS is a way for a student to remember some mathematical strategies, and it is a tool to help further them in the class, but doesn't actually require a technology tool. Low tech is a device that doesn't require a power source. It's minimal training for the student and is also low cost. As you can see here, I have a pencil grip. Another effective low-tech assistive technology that can be implemented in a classroom would be a graphic organizer. The teacher can print some of these for free or for low cost off of the internet, and these will help the student to organize their ideas and to be more effective within a classroom. For a mid-tech, these are some devices that require a power or a battery. They require a little bit more training and are slightly more expensive. And then we have our high-tech devices, which are our most sophisticated devices. They require power to operate. They require the most amount of training, and they can be very costly. Again, no matter what the device is, they are only going to be effective when they are implemented properly. Not all students learn the same way, and not all students need the same type of technology or devices. That's why it's imperative for IEP teams and as technology specialists to work together to ensure that the technology that the teachers are implementing are most effective for the student, to ensure that they are going to enhance their learning by implementing these into the classroom and into the instruction. Some students that would benefit from an assistive technology tool would be students with autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental neurobiological disorder characterized by severe and pervasive impairments in reciprocal social interactions and a deficit in communication skills, which this can lead to individuals to be nonverbal, as well as to have restrictive, repetitive, and stereotypical behaviors, interests, and activities. The term ASD is a broad term with different subtopics, and because ASD is a spectrum disorder, these individuals have a variety of different strengths and challenges. It's essential as educators to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our individuals, because all of our individuals are different and none are going to be learning the same way. So for this presentation specifically, I'm going to be focusing on students with ASD, specifically that are nonverbal, and ways to see how these communication devices can support to allow these students to become more verbal and have the ability to participate in and be in the least restrictive environment for themselves. Many students have shown growth with these communication devices, and these skills have progressed due to the implementation of these AAC methods and devices. Individuals with ASD are often categorized as students who struggle to socialize and communicate. Therefore, there is a variety of different tools that we have, assistive technology tools, that can be implemented into the classroom to promote students, to allow them to engage in conversations and to engage in the classroom activities and not feel like their disability is leaving them out, where they feel like they are at a disadvantage, where these technology tools are allowing them to be in their least restrictive environment and thrive and even become verbal participants in the classroom to help them be in their least restrictive environments. An augmentative and alternative communication are different devices and methods for students that are nonverbal. They can be implemented with devices to supplement an individual's verbal speech and serve as an alternative way for them to verbalize their speech. There are two different types of AAC methods to support nonverbal students, and they range from aided to unaided. Unaided refers to a student that would be using their body parts to communicate, such as hand gestures or manual gestures, and then they get as sophisticated enough where they were to require an iPad or a different type of communication device. These AAC methods vary to meet the needs of the individual, and that's what's so great about these devices, because they can range from no tech, where the student is just using hand gestures, or they can be as sophisticated as an in-depth, for where the student requires to touch a button in order for the voice to verbalize what it is that they want or need so that they can communicate or ask specific questions. And again, as I said, that's what's great about these devices, is that they're individualized and specific to the student to ensure that they are able to communicate and be in their least restrictive environment. Here you could see a chart of the different categories of AAC devices, and they range from low tech to high tech. There is a wide variety of different devices out there on the market, and as I said, they range from no tech, which are types of pictures or picture boards, choice boards that are really personalized and individualized for the student. And then they could range to high tech, where there are mobile devices and apps that are more sophisticated and are dedicated to speech generation, where they give out an audio. So, first, we're going to discuss some no tech types of assistive technology and AAC methods that can be implemented into the classroom that are effective for students who are nonverbal. So we have some hand gestures, finger spelling, sign language, and pointing. According to the Vanderbilt and Kennedy Center, children with ASD may be taught hand signals or gestures similar to baby signs. For example, a child may learn to bring their fingertips to their mouth to indicate that they are hungry. So, this is a strategy that's implemented as a very young age to allow students that are nonverbal to communicate and to get the message that they are hungry or that they need something, and that their caregiver can give them and provide them that they need to be successful and to basically survive. And as a young adult, if they are not verbal, they need the bare necessities so that they can communicate with their adults and other people in their communities. Benefits for students with ASD to use non-tech AAC methods are effective because they come at no cost. Additionally, hand gestures and hand signs are very personal to the student, so they can kind of be generated and created based on things that the student can do based on their ability. If some students have issues with fine motor skills and they may not be able to move their body in a certain way, that's not a hand gesture that's going to be effective for that student. Therefore, the person that is implementing and teaching these gestures and learning these gestures with the individual need to take into consideration the movements and motor skills that the child has. So they are individualized to make sure that the student can be effective and communicate in their least restrictive way. Research demonstrates that these hand signals are effective to help children with ASD communicate more effectively. Additionally, they propose that supplemental speech gestures may be used by children as a means of easing the cognitive burden of experienced when there's a cusp of further development. So if you're going to implement a tool that might be too experienced for a child, it might hinder their learning. Although there are many great aspects to these no-tech implementations, something to consider is that this may be a too fast pace. If you are signing to a child who is nonverbal, the person that is communicating with the individual might be signing too quickly, and it may be too fast for the student to understand what the person is signing. So that's just something to take into consideration, that when you are making these hand gestures and communicating with a nonverbal student, that the pace that the child can retain the information is definitely important and something to consider. The next type of devices we will be talking about are low-tech devices. Some ways to implement low-tech devices into the classroom would to be print out a choice board. You can see right here where it says free choice board. I've linked to some free choice boards that you can use on the internet. Once you print out these choice boards, they can be laminated. You can find a laminator on Amazon for about $21, and the sheet protectors for the lamination are $30 on Amazon. That's if you're looking for your own personal laminator for like at home or within your classroom. But for most times, for the most part, schools do have laminators within the school. So what the teacher can do is use this free choice board or sit down with an individual and create a specific choice board where you pick out specific words and things that you want to implement on the board. And then once the board is printed, the child and user would point to the different things on the board that they are interested in verbalizing. If the student has issues using their hands for fine motor skills, there are some other devices such as head pointers and mouth pointers, so that this way, if the child does not have use of their hands, they can point to these picture boards in another way. Another way to allow children to communicate would be dry erase board, where the student can write out the different things that they're interested in saying. This is an quick and easy way, but can be hinder students because they may feel distracted or discouraged because they have a lot to say and they have a lot to write out. And once they get halfway through, they might not be interested in writing anymore. They might be spelling things wrong. So although it is a free and easy accommodation, it might not be the best. Another great low-tech tool that can be implemented into instruction is picture cards. If you go onto the site that's linked here, you can find them for about $50. They have them for problem and solution, cause and effect, and sequencing. So this is a great way to implement these picture cards into ELA instruction. The cards are two pictures where the children would match up the problem and a solution, a cause or effect, or if there's a handful of different cards, the student would put them in sequential order. These are 4th and 5th grade skills that are tested. And it's nice that these students who are nonverbal can participate and they can engage in different types of ELA strategies that are tested in the classroom, and they're not restricted that because they're not verbal that they can't engage or participate in an ELA lesson. They would be able to participate in a small group, and they would be able to match the pictures together to show their classmates and their partners what they feel would be the problem and the solution based on the pictures and the matching. Additionally, they have cards on manners, which is important because some children at a lower age may not know the proper way to verbalize that they need something or they're struggling with something. So these manner cards are a way for children to learn and see effective ways to behave. And again, it comes at a low cost of $18 on the same site where the problem and solution cards can be purchased. This is also great because these cards will be familiar to the students. So these students with autism spectrum disorder will be familiar with the cards and how they work. And this same type of cards and the way they look and the way that they're supposed to be responding will be the same, and that type of consistent behavior will be effective for the student because they will know what's expected of them and how to effectively implement these cards in their classroom and their everyday life. According to Keller, when children are just starting out with their AAC journey, it is great to introduce low-tech boards for families to implement so that the children can learn systems when they're going through the process for the speech-generating devices. As I previously said before, it's important to start out with these no-tech and low-tech devices, see what's effective for the student, see what works for them, and see how they can be effectively implemented in their environment to ensure that they are further progressing with their speech, because you don't want to go and purchase a device that isn't going to be effective because it is too advanced for the student and they're not able to effectively communicate with other individuals with these devices. Some benefits of implementing these low-tech devices is that they are minimal cost, they are effective methods to communicate, It allows students to ask questions. So when you create these choice boards or picture boards, you can have a question board where the student, if they have frequently questions they might need to ask, they can have these questions laid out and they know if they have a question to ask where they can find them. Additionally, you can create a book of a portfolio by subject or class. So if the student is going to an ELA class, they can have all of their picture boards that are related to their ELA subject easily accessible. Same thing for math, science, or social studies, so that anything that they need to say based on that class can be found in one easy selection or location. Although this seems like a great accommodation because it's personalized for the student, it goes by the class and the subject and the grade that they're learning. Although that seems great, these binders can get very thick and very heavy with different papers that the student needs. As I said, you can laminate them so that they last longer. But without that lamination, with a few uses, these cards do begin to wear and tear, and you do see that that wear on the cards after a handful of uses. It has been said that picture-based AAC systems are frequently used and implemented for individuals for autism spectrum disorder, and it is shown to be quite effective because they are very personalized, they can be very cheap, and they are effective for students with lack of motor skills. But with the technology that we are exposed to in the world that we live in today, there are definitely more accommodations, and they are always updating as the technology grows, and you will see that within our next set of devices. So next we are going to discuss some mid-tech accommodations for students. We have electronic communication boards, which are basically the same as the picture boards that we just previously discussed, but these, when pressed, have an audio outcome. These are also going to be battery-powered devices. The first one we have here is the Tiny Talker, which can be found on Amazon for $25. You click some of these buttons and they will say things like yes and no, or more, please and thank you, or those are just some basic communications, or others can say want, need, help. Whereas the next one is the Go Talk board, which is found on a site linked here, and there is quite a variety that ranges from $50 to $250. Right over here on this side, left side, you can see the board I have posted. It is the more expensive board. The smaller boards had about 4 to 6 different outputs where they would push the button and they would speak. They had things such as countries or colors, questions, or just basic types of communication. It's great because there are a variety of different tools. Something that is required for the student to do is have the ability and the muscles to push the buttons. So if the student does not have that capability, something that they can use that I have already stated, maybe they can use a mouth stick or a head stick as a pointer to help them to choose. Additionally, we have this alphabet board, which can be purchased for $130. It is linked in the PowerPoint. And this is a device that can be used for students to type in things that they're interested in saying. Seems like it's a little bit of a more high-tech support. Instead of the student physically writing things on a whiteboard, they can type things on this alphabet board. This alphabet board isn't set up in the general format of the QWERTY board. It is the alphabet is on the left, in the middle are the numbers, and then there are some other buttons on the other side. It is used with your hands. Again, if they were to need a pointer, that is something that would be added as an accommodation. Another mid-tech device that can be used are switches. And we have the Big Mac, which are hand switches. These are $135. They're a little bit larger, so the switches come in different sizes, and the students would use the switches to choose an input or an output. And then I have the textured plate switches, which range from $30 to $130. These are used for students by their feet. So maybe if a student didn't have use of their arms but had strong foot skills, the plate switches would be a stronger accommodation for these children. Having well-trained instructors working with the individuals increases the likelihood that instructional methods and procedures are implemented with integrity, thus optimizing the potential for skill development and advancement for students. It's imperative when implementing these types of devices into the classroom or into the student's life to ensure that everyone that's using them knows how to effectively communicate with the individual. The purpose of these tools is to promote student learning and promote student communication. If these tools are not implemented properly, it could hinder the students' learning. Therefore, everyone involved needs to be effectively trained to ensure the integrity and optimize this potential of the tool to further the students' learning and to help the students' speech. There are a wide variety of benefits of implementing mid-tech assistive devices for students with autism spectrum disorder. Switches are effective for students in a variety of ways with that struggle with fine motor skills. If a student is not able to use their hands, the switches come in a variety of different ways that can be used with their elbows, knees, feet, or even those mouth and head sticks that I have previously discussed before. The student has the ability to tap them, and it doesn't have to just be with their hands. Additionally, these high-tech devices have audio outputs, which make it easier for communication. When the student pushes a button, a sound comes out, whereas the laminated choice boards are individualized and created with the student. Once the student points to a word, you have to actually go and see what it is that the student said and what they're meaning, and you have to piece together the conversation. Whereas these devices that have audio outputs, once the student pushes the button, the other person communicating with the individual will hear what is being said, and the conversation will flow a little easier, which might make it a little easier, and the student might be less resistant to use these devices. They also have foot switches available for students as well. There have been several studies that have reported an improvement in functional communication and pro-social behavioral in children and adolescents with ASD and developmental disabilities after the implementation of tablets with AAC apps, which we are going to look at in our next section with high-tech devices. These communication boards that we are discussing are similar to our high-tech devices, but are different in the aspect that these devices are just communication boards, whereas the high-tech devices are more of communication speakers and speaker generators. Additionally, these Go Talk boards are similar in price to some of the apps that are out there. So it's interesting to see because some of the mid-tech devices are the same price or compromisable in price to the high-tech devices. And that's something to keep in mind when you're getting a device, when your student has been using an AAC for quite some time and they know how to effectively use and implement them into the classroom and into their everyday lives. When you're getting these devices, consider what you're going to use, because these are devices that are implemented to promote student learning. And especially if there's going to be a lot of expensive money involved, You want to make sure that the device you're implementing is the best for the student. So there are communication boards as well as speech devices. So these mid-tech devices are communication boards. And like I said, their prices are similar to these high-tech speech devices. Now we have the tech scan, which is a communication device, but it does lead to full sentences and more accessible ways to communicate with another individual. Now, these tech scan devices do require a touch, whereas the Megabee is an eye gaze, which allows the students to look in the direction of the words or the pictures that they're trying to say or spell, and it will allow that speech to occur. Now, those are devices that are available. There are also apps that are available for an iPad or an Android. The Pro logo is $250, and it allows the students to communicate. The app continues to grow with us. One parent, it says, each update brings us to greater utility and reward. One parent stated, I can't see us ever using any other communication format. So it's nice to see that these things are implemented into children and other individuals' lives, and it is an effective way for them to speak and communicate with others and give them that voice that their nonverbalness takes away from them. We then have the TouchCat, which ranges from $9 to $300. We have the $9 one where it just is a basic choice board, a picture board, and then the $300 integrates that audio and output of more of a speech device. So when you're purchasing this tool, it's important to consider what type of device is required to ensure that the individual is the least restrictive and allows them to be at their most able state. We also have the Quick Talk AAC, which is an Android device, which comes in at $25. So again, there are different devices along different devices. There are different devices and there are different apps for different devices. So it's nice to see that you don't have to choose Apple or Android or specifically just an AAC device. There are a variety of different accommodations and methods to integrate to allow the individual to be at their least restrictive. There are many benefits to integrating high-tech devices. Many students and family are familiar with the iPad, so it's not very foreign or strange for them to learn about a new device. It's great because the app continues to update and grow. So if you feel like you wanted to say something and they didn't have that, with the suggestions and the growth and the updates, your interests and needs that you might want can be later implemented because of the continual growth. Whereas if you were to buy a GoTalk, which is a high-tech device, a mid-tech device, it doesn't update. It's once the pictures are on the board of your purchase, that's the device you have. Whereas an app does update, so it is a little bit more fluent to what you're doing, and it is nicer because you don't have to have a number of devices because each device has its specific communication. That's why the apps and the updates are effective to have. The apps can give students more opportunities, as I said, because of the updates. And with all these updates, as the app grows, there's such a large vocabulary. They continue to integrate new things. They take suggestions and they really help to individualize the app as best they can to fit all the needs of the students. And as previously stated before, not that the low and mid-tech devices don't do this as well, but it gives the students a voice. But these apps where they speak and they form speech device with the speech devices where they are able to communicate, it really gives them the voice because they're able to really communicate in full sentences rather than just pointing to pictures on a picture board. Several studies have reported an improvement in functional communication and pro-social behaviors in children and adolescents with ASD and developmental disabilities after the implementation of tablets with AAC apps. And it is so important, especially now with everything that's going on, to ensure that these students have the best social abilities that they can. So if they are able to communicate with these devices, it is so important to see that and hear from them and see that they're, expressing all that they possibly can. As much as I talk about how great these apps are and all these updates and how they keep changing, that could be something very difficult for a student with ASD because change can be difficult. So these students can be very used to seeing an app one way, and then one day they log on and the app can be changed or altered in a way that can cause the student to not feel that they can effectively learn with it. So as great as the app is, a mid-tech device might be better because there's never going to be an update and the buttons are never going to change. This way the student won't have to deal with that type of change if that is something that they're not able to deal with their disability. Again, students might not be properly trained. They might feel as if they know how to use devices because they use iPads all the time, and then they're not using the effective coaching, so they're not using the app to the best of their ability, and it could hinder their growth or their learning in the classroom. So this is just a brief shorthand of all the amazing devices that range from low to high tech. In the world of autism spectrum disorder and students that are nonverbal, it is imperative to ensure that they are heard and have a voice. And these AAC devices really give the students that opportunity that they might not have had prior years before. Thank you.